Moving on to the next step, you located the property, your client loves it, they want to offer on it. Step number 2, it seems very obvious, but there's a lot of agents out there that do not do it. You absolutely have to call the listing agent. Some people will write up an offer and just submit it. Some agents will text the listing agent or they'll email the listing agent. If you want to stand out and have a shot of your client getting the property, you absolutely have to call and have a conversation with the agent. And you're not just having a conversation with the agent, you're actually trying to become best friends with that agent. You want to befriend them and try and win them over to get them to know you, like you, and trust you, and know that, okay, it's going to be a great experience if I work with this agent, versus maybe there's another agent, offers are very comparable and competitive, but that other agent, maybe they're not as nice or as friendly or going to be as great to work with. Maybe they're going to kind of be a pain in the butt. But if you come across as, very easygoing, you're going to make this a seamless transaction. It's going to be a pleasure to work with you. That could be the difference between your client getting the property and not getting the property.
Definitely. You want to be, above all, you want to be professional, persistent, but not overbearing. You certainly want that agent to know that you are a professional. You are going to stick through this thick or thin. You're going to write a clean contract, whether you have terms in there or not. You want to, like Josh said, befriend them without overdoing it. Sing the praises of your client without gushing obsessively. There's a limit, because, mind you, they're going to have maybe 5 or 6 of these other conversations. Find some things that will help your client to stand out in their mind, and also, with the offer itself. And be professional. Let them know you're a professional and you're here to get the job done, and you're a pleasure to work with.
Yeah, and tie yourself a little bit. If you're a full-time agent, let them know that you're a full-time agent. You work around the clock. You're going to oversee this entire process. You're going to make sure that it flows seamlessly. If you're on a team, let them know, hey, look, I've got a full-time transaction coordinator. Between my coordinator, my team manager, other people that are on our team, we've got multiple eyes and people are involved. We're going to make sure that we take this from contract to close all the way to the end, which will make you stand out, hopefully over and above any other agent out there.
And let them know, just on that note, you want to make sure you want to let them know, hey, my client's not in this just to offer on the property. My client wants to close and move into the property. They're not just trying to lock it up. This is a house they plan to live in. Sometimes it's the little things, like I said, the little tweaks.
Yep. So then next, when you're on that conversation with the listing agent, you want to ask a lot of questions. Once again, not being overbearing, or you want to pry, but do it in a very nice, kind of professional way. So obviously, first and foremost, you want to ask how many offers do they currently have, or are they expecting? You want to find out if they do have offers right now. You want to find out, hey, are those offers at list price? Are they close to list? Are they over list? If they are over list, how much? Some agents will actually share, yes, we're listed at 300,000. I have an offer at 315 right now. Okay, well, great. That's really helpful information. Or, are all the offers financed, or are there any that are cash? You want to also ask, do any of those offers have an escalation clause built into the offer? Once again, if you know that the highest offer is 315 and you offer 320 and you didn't know there was an escalation clause, well, then your client's going to lose it to that offer that has the escalation clause in it.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot of listing agents are going to play closer to the chest, and they're going to work hard to try to treat everyone fairly. And so sometimes it comes down to phrasing and how you phrase those questions. For instance, you can say, my client is planning, let's say a house is listed at $299, and they're accepting multiple offers. You know that a couple have already came in, and you can phrase it and say, my client is planning to offer $307,000. Is that going to be enough to get it done? And see what they say. So, because most agents are not going to disclose an actual price of where they're at, but sometimes you can get some leanings or some inclination as to where you might need to be. We'll touch on this a little bit more later on, but definitely there's some things in the numbers. So you want to have those questions. Once again, you're professional. You want to ask a lot of questions without being overbearing and prying. You're really just trying to set your client up for success the best way possible.
I always like to ask, if they say that they do have offers over list, I like to ask, are they a little bit over list or are they a lot over list? I want to kind of, once again, gauge, because even if they're not going to share a number with me, usually they'll say, I've got one that's a little bit over list price, or I've got one that's way over list price. So you can use that and share that with your client.
Yeah, definitely. It is a little bit of cat and mouse. And of course, every individual is going to be different and every offer situation is going to be slightly different. But we've found that there are, you can extract just enough information to give you maybe a little bit of an edge. And that's what it comes down to. One thing you want to
Hang on, guys, we lost your volume. Oh, looks like we are having technical difficulties on the presenter's end.
All right, we're back. Sorry.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
You guys hear it? Any thumbs
We
up?
got you now.
Okay.
You're good.
So going back just to the conversation, so you're having with the listing agent, you want to find out, first and foremost, you want to find out when they're going to be responding to that offer. You need to know when that's going to happen and in what way they plan to respond. Do they have a plan? If they don't have a plan, it's fairly safe to assume that they might just pluck an offer off the top and to be done with it. A lot of our agents might say, hey, we're accepting through Sunday at 5 o'clock. We're going to review that night. And then, we'll either do a multiple counter or, they might take one. You need to know as much of that as possible so you know how strong your client offer to be from the get-go. I found that it's been helpful, if multiple offers, if there's more to be a little stronger at first, get closer to maybe your client's upper end of their number. Because if you hold back too much at first, if you hold back too much, some sellers get a little shaky when you make that big jump after, when the time comes. So once again, it's a little bit of a dance, but you definitely want to know when they're responding to offers and how they plan to respond. And if they don't know, suggest a couple options and see which one they gravitate towards. Are you plan to do a multiple counter? Are you going to counter people individually? Is your going to choose the best one right now? You definitely want to know when they're coming back to.
And if the listing agent says, you know what, honestly, I really don't know what my seller's planning on doing, one of two things. One, I'll say, hey, do you mind just having a conversation with your seller and then letting me know what they plan on doing? Because I want to know. Or you just have to go into it assuming that they are going to pick the highest and best offer as far as not only price but terms, and they're going to just move forward with one offer. So never assume multiple counter, never assume highest and best, because you might come in a little bit less and not be putting everything out there. And I think that's especially in this market when things are flying off the shelf, you can't make that assumption.
We've found that if a listing agent will not commit to a multiple counter or a highest and best, that generally means they're going to accept what they deem the best offer from round one. And so if they're a little wishy-washy, you know that you need to be stronger with your initial offer, if that makes sense. I mean, that's the rule I would take from that.
And another question we always like to ask is, what terms would the seller really like? So do they want to close in 15 days, or do they want to close in 30 days or in 2 months? We want to know what title company that they want to use, if they have a preferred title company. We want to know if they want to do any sort of post-possession or lease back. These are all really important things to make your offer as clean as possible and as attractive as possible to the seller.
Do they plan on keeping the fridge, the washer dryer, the flat screen TV? I mean, if you can find out those little things that that seller, maybe they're really attached to the chandelier and the listing agent forgot to put it in the MLS. If you can know that, now it's already in your offer. Once again, right there, that's just a little thing to help you stand out.
Some sellers, they'll want the highest price because they need every single dollar in order to potentially move into that next property. Some sellers will want to be able to stay in the property for a couple of days, move out, or maybe a couple of weeks to find that next property. Some sellers will want to have assurance that you are closing, and potentially maybe a non-refundable earnest might be something that might be very attractive to them to know that you're in it to win it. So finding out what they truly want and what's going to be most attractive to the seller is obviously most important.
Yeah, definitely. Because one thing, there's some sellers who price is second or third on their list, and what they really want is they want they want to know that this deal is closing, and they want to work with someone they view as the most qualified, the easiest approval process. You know, appraisals definitely come into play, and the client's qualifications to, you know, to get that deal done in the end. And so you want to know, these are all things that you have to or want to get out of a listing agent. Very tough to get it by text, very tough to get it by email. Phone conversations are best. You may have to call that listing agent 3 or 4 times to get them on the phone. Be persistent, be professional.
Yeah. And once again, you're trying to befriend that agent, and you're not going to befriend them through a text message or email. So get them on the phone, be as nice as you humanly possibly can be, and sweet talk them. Try to get all the questions answered that you have. And then once again, at the very end of the conversation, reiterate how qualified your buyer is, reiterate how great it would be to work with you. Just, you know, kind of end that conversation on a high note and let them know that you'll be submitting a really strong, clean offer. So I guess moving on to number 3, which would be
now you're armed with the information. Sorry.
Yeah. Now that you're armed with the information,
Yep.
Inform and strategize with your client.
Yep. Now you're going to take everything you've learned. You're going to get back together with your client, and you're going to put together a great offer. You know, so you want to relay as much information as possible back to your client. You're obviously going to be reviewing the comps and the market info, where your client wants to be. But depending on that conversation, how many offers have already been received, when they plan on getting back to them, you know, now it's really the strategy session that could be the difference between you getting the property and not. Because the way you handle this conversation certainly makes a difference within the buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if your client is maybe a little hesitant, or they're, you know, they don't necessarily want to get into a bidding war. First off, they might be in a bidding war on any property that they offer on. So you kind of have to get them past that. Once again, that goes back to the advising your client at the beginning of this conversation. But number 2, if anyone's even just a little bit hesitant, we always inform our clients, hey, look, just lock up the property. Let's submit a good, strong offer. Let's lock it up. You've got your 10-day inspection period. During those 10 days, if for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable with the property, for one reason or another, we can always cancel, and you'll get a full refund of your earnest. But at the very least, lock up the property and give yourself an opportunity to purchase this home instead of wait a day or 2, lose it to somebody else, and then you're kicking yourself because you didn't actually make an offer or throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, there's definitely some things, and it does. You know, each situation is different, but a line Josh uses all the time, and it's you know, it's really a good one. You say, you know, hey, let's put our best foot forward so that if we don't get the property, you can sleep well at night knowing that you gave it everything you've got. You went as high as you were willing to go. Because if you hold something back and then you lose the property, that's really where regret and remorse comes in.
And it's really not even a lie.
It's not even a lie.
Actually, it came from you know, losing multiple offers and having clients who were unable to sleep at night. That made me realize, okay, I've got to inform and advise my clients that, look, if we lose this property, great. You know, if you gave it your best foot, you put your best foot forward and you gave it your all, and we lost it, okay, at least we know we can look ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day and know that we tried. But if you're holding anything back and we don't get the property, you're going to kick yourself if you lost it over a couple $1,000s.
Yep. And I like to say to people too, it's like, hey, you know, for those people, for those buyers out there that are still trying to get a deal, all right? Everybody wants a deal. We get that. I want a deal. Everybody wants a deal. The deals in this market are the properties you buy today and next month, that was a deal. The deals right now are properties that people bought in February. You look back at something that sold in February, wow, that guy got a great deal on that property. You know what? He probably paid market price for it, but he locked it up. And now with what the market's doing, now is this always the case? No, of course not. But the difference is we all, you know, you're in homes for so many different reasons. You have to have a place to live, et cetera, et cetera. The deals come really, you know, even if you pay an extra $5 grand or 10 grand today, next year from now, when you're settled in that house, love the school, love the neighborhood, love your neighbors, does that 5,000-10,000 even make a difference? And I'll bet most people are going to answer, no, it doesn't.
Absolutely not. And once again, the deal is the interest rate that you're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, the deal is, hey, look, you got a 3.5 or you got a 3% interest rate. That's the deal right there. Great. And in 6 months and a year, when you look back and interest rates are at 4, 4.5, and 5%, you're going to say, I'm so glad I locked in at 3% or 3.5.
Yeah. I mean, and the reality, the totally thing is like I said, once they're in, and my clients and our clients who bought, you know, even earlier this summer are already, you know, counting their lucky cards that they were able to win those offers, get in that property. And now they're, you know, they're watching what's happening. So don't let your client, try not to let them get too hung up on, you know, getting an amazing deal, because it's just not necessarily the market for that. It depends on the price point and everything else. But the homes that are selling today are tomorrow's great deals.
When there's 8,000 homes on the market, and when normally there's 30,000 homes on the market, and we have 10,000 people moving to the valley every single month, there's going to be a 10,000 home shortage by the end of this year. There are no deals right now. Like I said, the deal's the interest rate.
Buying a property, that's the deal.
So you got to come up with price.
Yep.
And Morgan just won a bidding war recently.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is with all of this is, you know, you keep at it, and you know, I've lost my fair share of deals too, but you definitely, and they're not necessarily because we didn't, you know, your clients put numbers on how high they want to go on specific houses. There's nothing you can do about it sometimes. However, if it is a house that your client is dead set on, they will do almost anything within reason to get it. There are things that you can think about. And some of the things that I think are always really helpful, you've got to get into the psychology of the other buyers in the market. Okay? You've got to try to, because you're not necessarily competing against the seller at this point, you're competing against the other buyers. Now, do you know who they are, what they're doing? No. But the things we do know is, you know, a couple of things to keep in mind. Think in percentages rather than numbers sometimes. So while 10 grand over asking might seem like a great number, it's like, wow, we paid 10 grand over asking. It's all relative. If it's $1.5 million house, that's not even 1%. And so 10 grand, I mean, that's going to be nothing. 15 grand probably isn't even going to really bat an eye in some cases if there's enough people battling for it. Now, if it's a $300,000 or a $400,000 house, yeah, 10,000 might be enough. But on that note, just one quick thing is stay away from hard numbers. Stay away from the 10 grand over asking. You know, go 12. You want to, if your client's willing to throw out, hey, I'll go 10 grand over, know that there's 3 or 4 others or a couple others that are probably going to think in that same ilk. You want to take whatever, you know, you've got these hard numbers, the 5 grand over, the 10 grand over, the 15. Those are kind of the benchmarks, right? Know that if you go exactly 10 grand over, chances are so did someone else. You know, so if you're 12,000 over or 11,500, you know, think Price is Right. Everybody knows the game show Price is Right. You know, you've got to be just a bit above, but you also want to be a noticeable difference above. If you're $100 above the next offer, you know, but maybe they're putting 5% more down than your client, they're going to go with that other one. They're not going to care about the $100. Now, if you're $2,000 over, now we're getting somewhere, right? So you want to think away from the hard numbers, more in odd numbers, or try to look at those tiers that other agents are going to hit who haven't listened to today's call. And they're going to hit that 10 grand over, and you say, you know what, I'm going to come in there at 13,000 over, and we're going to get this house.
Yep. And price is really important,
Very
but it's
important.
not everything. So we've got a whole list of terms that we like to present to our clients, and once again advise them on these different terms. You know, as we go through here, obviously you want to have that conversation with your clients so that you're protecting them every step of the way. But these are terms that we do share with our clients that help to win the bidding war. So for example, one term, which is very popular, is writing in as is, purchasing the home as is, which, you know, that's something pretty common that Morgan and I do with our clients. A lot of times our clients feel pretty comfortable with that because you still have your inspection period. And if anything were to come up during that inspection period, number one, you can cancel. Or number two, there's nothing that says you can't go back to the seller and say, hey, you know what, we didn't realize that the air conditioning unit wasn't working.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit, we're not saying waive your inspection. There's a difference. Nobody said waive your inspection period. You're saying state in the contract your buyer is willing to accept the property as is. There's nothing legally that stops them if something big comes up to still going back. But what you're telling them, we're not going to nickel and dime you for little items.
And you can even write in as is up to $3,000 worth of items that the inspector finds or something along those lines if you want to protect your client. Typically, we'll just write in as is just because our clients feel pretty comfortable with that.
You're still submitting a BINSR.
Yeah.
There's, yes, may some listing agent come back and say, hey, you said you were accepting it as is. I said, well, we were, until we got in there and realized that the roof was 100% shot. And, you know, and at that point in time, it's like, I could either cancel based on the roof, or my client is now providing you an opportunity to negotiate this. If you guys don't want to negotiate, that's fine. You know, we'll probably walk away.
Now, here's a little tweak to the inspection period that we also like to incorporate. So typically, obviously, you have your 10-day inspection period in a contract. We like to reduce it down to 7 or maybe even 5 days. 5 days is plenty.
As long as you have your inspector in place.
Exactly.
You know, but yeah, it's enough time to get an inspection done.
Absolutely. And you should have multiple inspectors that you work with, or at least a list of multiple inspectors that you work with, so that if someone can't get in there within the 5 days, you can go to the next inspector. But that one's very popular because that shows that your client is serious. They want to get in, they want to do their inspection. They don't want to tie up the property for 10 days and then potentially cancel at the end of 10 days. You know, but obviously you could potentially waive your inspection period. It's not anything that Morgan and I recommend.
We definitely don't recommend it because you want to have that inspection period's in the contract for a reason. Even if you shorten it down to 3 days, it's still a time for your seller to sleep on it, or sorry, your buyer to sleep on it. You know, walk through the house again and just be convinced. We're all in the game to save our clients earnest money. Nobody ever wants to be in that situation where you lose their earnest. You need the inspection period. I would almost never write it out unless the client was dead set on it.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, if it's an investor and they're purchasing the property, and we had one of our team members that just wrote this up the other day. The client's buying the house and they're tearing the entire house down. They're going to scrape it just for the dirt. So they wrote in, no inspection period, but there's no need.
What do they care?
Yeah, so they're ripping the whole house down anyway. So there are times where you could waive the inspection period and it would make sense. But once again, your client would number one, have to be on board with it, feel comfortable with it, understand all the ins and outs to waiving that inspection period. But most of the time, Morgan and I will just reduce the inspection period down, which once again is very attractive to the seller.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing, you know, when these multiple offer things, you know, we're going to get to appraisal, but a big thing on that is, you know, write in the contract that you will order the appraisal within 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. In our contract, there's no set time frame to when that appraisal has to get ordered. You can let the seller know up front, we're going to be proactive. We're going to immediately get in and do an inspection, and we will order the appraisal within such and such time. You know, because that just, it shows them that the willingness is there. And if it's a time where you're questionable if that house is going to appraise or not, the seller will at least feel better knowing that the appraisal will be back sooner than later. And they're not going to have to sit around and wait, you know, through a bids or negotiation process and everything else before the appraisal is ever even ordered.
Yep. And another popular term that we see in a lot of our offers, we see a lot of people waiving the appraisal, because in this market with offers being over and above list and appraisers not even be able to, you know, keep up with the comps, that we see a lot of offers that come in where people are waiving the appraisal, which once again, you can do. We have done it for our clients before. If you do it for one of your clients, once again, you want to advise them on all the ins and outs. What happens if it doesn't appraise? You know, explain to them that your client will have to come to the table with the difference, you know, whatever that appraisal amount is and purchase price.
You want to talk through all of these with your client and make sure they're in great detail. Make sure that they are well versed in what happens if this, what happens if that. You know, one way, if you are going to waive the appraisal, something that we've done as of late, which is nice, is you'll waive the appraisal for the amount you've offered over asking price. Meaning that you're putting the onus back on the seller and the listing agent. They stuck the list price on the property, so they should be able to get that to at least appraise for list price. My client will commit to the $13,000 over that they offered, you know, if it appraises somewhere in the middle, but that puts the onus back on the listing agent to say, hey, put your money where your mouth is. The property needs to at least appraise for what you listed it at. And we'll make up the difference, because that's where we put our foot forward.
Absolutely. Also, doing a larger earnest deposit will make your offer look a little bit more attractive. So instead of maybe doing what we see or would call like the traditional 1% that we see in a lot of offers that come in, as far as the earnest money goes, put 2, 3, 4, 5% down. Show that you're strong. If your buyer can put down a larger earnest deposit, it once again shows that your client is serious, that they're strong, that they're willing to step up to the plate and do whatever they can to get the deal done. So that when they're comparing the two offers and they see, okay, this guy's putting down $3,000 and this guy's putting down $15,000, obviously, you know, that's going to be the biggest difference.
It's going to look a lot stronger to them. Totally. And so, you know, and we all know that earnest money just goes towards their down payment, towards their closing costs. And if you're doing things as you should and by the book as you should, that earnest money should never be at jeopardy so long as your client wants to buy the house.
Absolutely. And we know cash is king. So if your client can purchase cash versus a financed offer, that's going to stand out substantially more than the finance offer, especially if they're at the exact same price. So obviously you'll want to have that conversation with your client. Cash is definitely
another term that we like that will help your offer just stand out a little bit is, especially let's say it's an over asking situation and you're going back. One thing that's nice is the buyer can offer to pay for a portion of the seller's closing costs. Now, you don't want this to be unlimited, of course. Otherwise, you know, forget that. But you'll be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So they'll be paying for all the.
So use this with caution. Don't go just flying off buyer to pay seller's closing. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know, but you can say buyer will pay seller's closing costs up to $3,000, up to $5,000. It's just a way to make your offer net out a little better, maybe look a little more attractive. And when we're dealing with having to hit these high appraisal numbers, that also may help, because rather than being 20,000 over asking, maybe you're 15, or, you know, but you paid some of those seller's closing costs. The net to the seller is the same as a 20K over, but for the appraiser, it's a little easier number to hit.
Another term that we like to write in is potentially doing a post-possession or a lease back, especially if you've had that with the listing agent and they've expressed that their client would like to have a few days to move out afterwards. Once again, you've got to advise your client, you have to have this conversation, make sure that they understand all the ins and outs to doing a post-possession, but it is something that typically is very attractive to a seller that's looking to move into that next property, and they need a couple days or a week to move out.
Yeah.
So that's something that you could definitely write in if that's something the seller needs or wants. Or also doing a non-refundable earnest. If we do a non-refundable earnest, usually it's after the inspection period. Even if it's a financed offer, as long as your client understands all the ins and outs to what would happen if they weren't able to get financing, and if the lender's confident, if they're confident, and they know that their money would be on the line, we like to write in a non-refundable earnest after the inspection period.
And to be fair, I mean, it doesn't just have to be at the end of that 10 days. You can still use that clause and say after 15 days, after, 17 days, you can kind of put a number after the appraisal is returned. That earnest money for all rights is almost non-refundable anyway in some of those situations, but spelling it out in the offer and putting a timeline on that are little tweaks that can make your offer stand out. Hey, these guys are, they're willing to let their earnest money go hard after 15 days. Yeah. That's an attractive thing to a seller. And it's all about making your offer more attractive to the seller.
And if you do the non-refundable earnest money, please use the additional clause addendum, which actually spells out in very good terms what that looks like for both the buyer and the seller. Because obviously if the seller breaches the contract, you still want to be able to get out of it and get your client their earnest money back. So definitely use the additional clause addendum should you use non-refundable earnest. Another thing that you could do, which Morgan and I aren't huge fans of doing it, but it's something that we like to share with you and potentially you might incorporate it into your deals, is you potentially could reduce your commission. It's not something that we do, but we've had other agents who have done it, saying that, oh, instead of taking a 3% commission, I'll take a 2.5% commission.
Keep in mind, commissions cannot be part of the deal. Yeah. That is against rules. So, it's not something that you want to put in an offer. It's not a part of it. And it's rare that you would ever do that on your initial offer. It might come in later, but it does happen when someone is maybe representing a family member or something along those lines. But there's other way. That's kind of a last ditch.
It's a last ditch effort. It's something that we rarely, if at all, even do it. But we've seen other agents who have done it. Either they've reduced their commission a little bit, and once again, it's not in the offer. It's just in an email saying, hey, instead of 3%, I'm only going to take 2.5%, or I'm going to give 0.5% back to the seller, or something along those lines. So there's ways that you can sweeten the deal without having it as part of the contract.